Hey, how is everybody? Thanks for joining in. It looks like the video might be coming in and out again. I'm not sure why. So if you lose it, know that I'm recording it and I will put it back. I'll put it up on YouTube and on our Facebook or on our website here as soon as we're done. We move in verse 42. We've started with Father, if you are willing. And now we get to this part where Jesus prays, please take this cup of suffering from me. Jesus knew what was ahead of him here in the next, which would begin here in the garden in the next few hours, and then what would transpire over the next 24 hours for him being crucified on our behalf. And here in this prayer where he's taken this posture on his knees or on his face and addressing God in a very personal way as Father, and then giving the condition of if he's willing. It's not a matter of can God or can't he, it's a matter of will or won't he, according literally to his will. So he prays that he could take this cup away from him if God's willing to. This is a part of God we don't enjoy talking about. Oftentimes it gets looked over and skipped over, but when we talk about God, we have to talk about his wrath, and that he has, patience, but he has a tolerance of, a tolerance level for sin and rebellion, and he will judge ultimately. So there's a couple of verses that I want to just share. First is from Psalm 75. Verse 8, it says, "For the Lord holds a cup in his hand that is full of foaming wine mixed with spices. He pours out the wine in judgment, and all the wicked must drink it, draining it to the dregs." This cup that Jesus is praying about, I don't think anybody now would think that it's a literal cup that he's got. It's a figurative cup. The Old Testament talks about this cup, as the psalmist writes in chapter 75, that it's this cup of wrath. The prophet Isaiah addresses it in chapter 51, verse 17 of his book. He says, wake up, O Jerusalem. You have drunk the cup of the Lord's fury. You have drunk the cup of terror, tipping out its last drops." Again, this is the Lord's cup. This was the symbolism used in the Old Testament for how God's anger and judgment and wrath would be poured out from a cup. In Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 15, he writes that this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said to me. "Take from my hand this cup, filled to the brim with my anger, and make all the nations to whom I send you drink from it." So when Jesus is here praying in the garden that if God is willing, please take this cup, could he pass this cup of suffering away from him? It wasn't the suffering that was in this cup, it was the wrath of God that would cause the suffering. That in that suffering was the being caused by the sins of all of man. It was Jesus was going to suffer for what we've done, not for what he did wrong. So we can't miss that this cup representing God's judgment, and God was not going to change his will to do this some other way, because we know that there was no other way for mankind to be saved from the penalty of their rebellion, of their sin, than through the innocent and substitutionary suffering of Jesus Christ. He lived a perfect life, came from glory, born to Mary and Joseph, lived a perfect life, and then around age 30 declared his messiahship, and ultimately died on the cross that we remember today, on Calvary's cross on that Friday. And he died to make a way. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, that no one comes to the Father but by me." That this was the way to the Father. Two people had everything in the Garden of Eden, went against God's will when he gave them the one rule to not touch the one tree, and they did. It broke our fellowship with God, which we still suffer from now, and Jesus took our place on the cross. And in doing that, he took the cup of wrath of God, of judgment that you and I should have suffered on our behalf. And it's only through faith in him, believing that he is who he said he is, that he did live a perfect life. He did die in our place as a substitute. That the tomb didn't hold him. In a couple of days here, we'll be celebrating that empty tomb. That death couldn't hold him, and that through him we are reconciled to God, and through faith in him we're reconciled to God, and he not only removes the guilt and shame and removes the penalty of sin from us, which is hell, that we could be reunited with him, but that we could do that for eternity. And we're in this personal relationship with him. So here Jesus is in this prayer, understanding the wrath of God that he's going to experience. And the sombering part of that is it wasn't because of his actions, it's because of ours. So we find Jesus here heavy in prayer, in anticipation of what was to come that you and I caused. So that's the reality of the story. But I'm grateful that he did it, and that through him we do get forgiveness and life eternal. I'll see you guys in 55 minutes. We're going to look at the last part of that verse. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. I'll see you soon. Thanks.